All right, guys, welcome back to the shack. Today, we're going to talk about a little adventure that I've been on for about a year and a half ago. It all started with the predecessor to the machine you see behind me there, the Genmitsu 4040 Pro Max. About a year and a half ago, I got into CNCs and started playing around with, the rotary type CNCs. I'd been in lasers for quite a while, but I wanted to step over into the CNC world. And a year and a half later, guys, here we are. And today I want to share with you my journey, what I've learned, the things that I know now that I wish I'd have known then, and maybe help you guys in your journey and the year and a half for you to come. Maybe save you some heartache and some mistakes along the way. So it's going to be just kind of a hodgepodge all about CNCs today. So stick around and we're going to get into it. All right, guys, waiver before we even get started. I haven't made millions of dollars with CNCs. I have made enough to pay this machine off in 11 months. I'm proud of that. That's about a $5,000 investment in 11 months, and it's paid for now. So there's that. Haven't been doing it for a real long time, only about a year and a half. I started out originally with the Genmitsu 4040 Pro that SaneSmart had sent out to me. Since then, I've had the 4040 Pro, had the 3030 Pro Ver, the 6050. I've got the 4040 Pro Max, and of course, this machine that I purchased myself February of last year. And I purchased it with my own money because I had jobs that I needed to do to be able to do those jobs. I needed a bigger CNC. And the cost difference between the 2-foot and the 4-foot wasn't enough to discourage me, so I went for the 4-footer. And so I've got the big machine. You don't have to have it, but it is nice when you need it. So I'm going to go over some of the tools and things that I've learned, as well as where I stand on the machines that I've started with. And so I'm going to move you over here where you can see things a little better, and we're just going to talk and go. All right, guys, so I get asked a lot whether the smaller CNCs are good for somebody to start out with. And I see lots of guys out there, and guys, everybody has their own opinion to that matter. There's pros and cons to doing it. If you're like me and there's no way you can convince yourself that it's a good idea to drop $4,500 or $5,000 or more if you go with some of the other brands on a CNC, not knowing how well you're going to do with it, not knowing how frustrating it's going to be, then that's the boat I was in. I started out with the older version of this machine. It's a 40 by 40, which is 400 millimeters by 400 millimeters. You can make some pretty cool projects. Projects like my Vectric sign that I made here. You can make this sign or one at least similar, this close to this size, with this machine. You're going to be limited to that 400-ish dimensions. So as far as big projects, that's not going to be a thing. Smaller things like these little guys right here. These are just some little puzzle games that I designed in Vectric, and I made these on my Shipoko, but there's no reason why you can't make it on this machine. You're going to have lots of versatility. This little guy is very rigid. I do think unless you just really want to do small stuff, I do think this is probably as small as I would go as far as the CNC world for now. There are some other smaller machines out there if you're wanting to do circuit boards or just don't care to do anything bigger than a coaster. But to get the feel and just the productivity of a bigger machine without having to have a bigger machine, the 4040, this is a really rigid machine. It is capable of some really good speeds, accuracies, and consistencies. It does operate with Vectric, so it's going to be an easy transition if you learn how to use this guy. It's an easy transition over into something like the Shipoko, which is what I did. So with that said, so that you guys know that you don't have to start off with a Shipoko 5 Pro. It's nice if you can, but that is a big gamble to spend that kind of money on something that you don't know, you don't know if you're going to like it or not. You kind of want to test drive something before you decide on it. And there's really not a good place to go test drive CNCs unless you can talk to somebody like myself, or if you have a friend that you could go to their house and maybe run it and just get your hands on it. So let's go over, and I'm going to use my Shapeoko to kind of point out some of the things that I think you need to consider when you're getting your CNC and getting it set up, and how you set up your CNC. So let's spin the camera around. All right, guys, so I'm going to start back here, and I want to point out something to you. This right here, guys, this hose, dust collection, chip collection, however you want to refer to it as, is very important. And I will say that as far as CNCs goes, typically the whine of the bit interacting with the material is going to be pretty loud, but typically your chip extraction or dust extraction is probably the second loudest part of the outfit. You do need something, the better it works, the better off you'll be. The quieter it is, the better off you'll be. Me personally, I love my little Shopsmith. This chip collection works really, really good. It's quiet. This one is dedicated to only work with the CNC. I've got it on a relay. When the spindle turns on, the dust collection cuts on. It does a really good job of keeping that stuff picked up, because if not, it's going to get really extremely dusty in your shop. Another thing that you need to consider is when you're looking at your CNC and you're looking into getting it, depending on what size you buy, if you're getting one of the little small 4040s, you're probably going to get either a little DC motor. You can get spindle kits where they have actual, the smaller VHDs that work with some of them. I know SaneSmart offers one with the 6050 and stuff like that. They have their version of it. But then you get into the more, I guess I would say more top of the line spindles and stuff like that. When you get into such things as the red line for Onefinities, CNC Labs has them, Shapeoko has them, and then there's like PWN makes spindle kits for different machines. So you could even, if you wanted, put a 65mm spindle, an air-cooled 65mm spindle on, say, a SaneSmart 4040. Now, you would have probably more in the spindle than you did the CNC, but if that's what you wanted to do, you can do that. Typically, the spindles are going to come in 65mm or 80mm sizes, which you're going to have to make sure what this one receives. This machine, this is my Shapeoko 5 Pro. That is a 1200 watt or 1.2 kW spindle. It's a 65mm spindle, so I could take this out and put a trim router. Carbide makes their own trim router I could put in there. A lot of people use Bauer's. DeWalt is a little bit bigger, but you can, with some of the other machines like the Jimitsu, you can actually run a DeWalt trim router. Typically with the Shapeoko, you're either going to be using carbides, a Makita, Bauer, some of the other brands, but you're going to want to make sure it has a 65mm tube size on the router to be able to use it with this machine. But I've had this machine now since February of last year. As you can see, I've modified the bed. I have learned that one of the most important things about CNCing is your hold down methods. Now, you want a highly effective hold down because you don't want your material moving. Some people will screw into the spoil board, use different types of clamps. There's thousands of ways of doing it probably. The big favorite of a lot of people is the CA glue and painter's tape to hold materials to the bed. That works great. But if you're doing something, batching things out, sometimes you want something a little faster. I have designed myself a file to cut these little dog holes in the top of my machine, and then I use assortments of different clamps, whether it be the standard clamps that Carbide 3D make, or using some of these Rockler, my little speed clamps here for other projects. It just depends on what I need as far as the needs of the job and how hard the item is going to be to hold down. But that's where you need to make sure you do a really good job of that, because I will tell you, material coming loose is going to result in broken bits, flying projectiles. It can get ugly. So whatever you do, make sure that your material stays where you put it. With the Shapeoko, I've also done some upgrades for you Shapeoko guys out there. You can see here, these things are bad about the drag chains falling over into the work area. When you're trying to reach in and get things, you'll bump them and you won't realize you bumped them. And the next thing you know, you're running the machine and the drag chain's over in here. I cut me some clear acrylic pieces to go here to prevent that from happening. Carbide does offer those. They have a file for something similar on the website that you can download if you have a 3D printer. Also, my little dogs that I've got in here, these are all 3D printed. I designed the file for those, and I made the file for the CNC to cut the holes, and then I made the 3D file to print these so that I can use them. The cool thing about using 3D printable clamps and stuff is the material's not gonna hurt the bit. You can cut right through one of those and it's gonna be no damage done to the bit. But if you do destroy one or weaken it or damage it or whatever, you just simply fire up the 3D printer and print some more. So that's why I like utilizing 3D printed materials for CNC clamping. It works, and it's easy to replace if something happens to them. All right, guys, first and foremost, one of the most important parts of this entire operation when you're doing something is gonna be, of course, the software. But second to that is the bits. And I'll go ahead and throw this out there. I am a big advocate of Cody's bits. Cadence Manufacturing calls the bits the Genie bits, has a whole collection. I will say he doesn't have a bit for every type thing. There's some bits that you may want for acrylics and stuff like that that Cody may not make. And in that case, I always go with IDC Woodcraft and get those bits over there. But when I can, I try to stick with Cody. And the reason is I know Cody, he's a good guy, and I want to support his business. So the thing that I will tell you is when you're first starting out, don't be afraid to use budget bits and scrap materials, because that is going to minimize your expense of learning, because it's not a question of if you're going to mess up, it's just when. You're going to have mistakes. Mistakes are going to be made. You're going to do like I did and cut like a little corner right here on your aluminum inserts. You're going to break bits. It is going to happen. It's a part of learning, and if anybody tells you that they've never done it, they're probably lying to you, or either they don't do the thing that they're saying they do, okay? It's going to happen. Bits will get broken the majority of the time. The two things that I will tell you that are going to cause you to break bits more often than anything else is going to be either your work holding comes loose, or you forget to turn on your router, or forget to turn on your spindle, whichever you may have. That will definitely break a bit. So don't forget to do that, which you're going to. If you're new to it, it's going to happen to you. But just know those are lessons that will help you fix future occurrences, because I double check and triple check, and I will stand here with my thumb on the e-stop button until I make sure that spindle cuts on, because I have broke a couple of bits because of that. So there you go. So make sure you get good software. I like to use Vectric. Personal preference, there's several other softwares out there. Easel's probably the easiest one for somebody brand new into it to use, but if you got the time to sit down and learn Vectric, I strongly recommend it. Vectric is a very powerful software, and it's a software that will grow with you. So when you're first starting out, you're doing those simple shapes, Vectric can do that. And as you get bigger and better at it and you're doing 3D stuff, Vectric can do that. So it can grow with you. It's not cheap, but it can grow with you. Some of the other softwares do the same, but I'm partial to Vectric because it's what I use. So another big tool that you're going to want to get is get yourself a decent, they don't have to be the cream of the crop, they don't have to be $500. Get yourself a decent set of calibers and make sure you've got a good measuring tape. It's nice to have a little small one that you can stick in your pocket when you're working on things, because you'll catch yourself going back and forth looking for the measuring tape a lot. I usually keep a pencil attached to my measuring tape, because those two things come in handy when you're sketching stuff out or drawing it. Clamps, like I said, clamps are very critical. Depending on the machine that you have, you may or may not have T-tracks. If you do have T-tracks, these are some Rockler clamps that I've run across and I've been using, and they work really well with T-tracks. You do have to take this little piece here out and flip it upside down, slightly modifying the way that they work, but once you do that, they work really well with the T-track on the Shapeoko, especially if you have a dog set up like I got. All right, X-Fasten tape. It's not great for every occasion, but you're going to need something sometimes to add a little extra hold down for materials, especially thin sheet materials or thinner materials when you're using an upcut bit, because an upcut bit is going to pull the material up. And if it's thin material, it can cause it to flail about and move and do all kinds of weird vibrations and stuff like that. If you don't want to use the X-Fasten tape like I use, you can also use painter's tape and some CA glue. Put painter's tape on both surfaces and then CA glue in between, slap it together, let it dry, and it's a really, really good hold, but it's not permanent. You can remove it unless you put too much glue and it soaks into your spoil board, in which case you're going to want to get a scraper and scrape that off of there. Ask me, yeah, I've done it. Another really handy tool, if you have it, is this guy here. And the reason is especially early on, I would leave insanely big tabs because I was scared things were going to move, and until I got comfortable, I left huge tabs. And this little oscillating saw with this little angle blade on here is really good for knocking those tabs off. Now that I've gotten better at it, my tabs are literally just thick enough to hold the piece in place, and when I get done, I just bump the piece toward the bottom. It pops out and just leaves little pieces on there. Then you go behind it with this guy with a flush cut bit and knock those tabs off. So these tools are, I would definitely recommend having either this or this for tab removals. You can do a pretty good job of this guy, but you're going to get smoother results with a router and a flush cut bit as far as once they're off. But if you're getting them out, or if you don't go quite deep enough on your cut, this is pretty handy to have. But there again, so is this. But those tools would definitely be something I would consider having. And of course, the biggest tool that you're going to need with a CNC is going to be a good dust collection, chip collection, whatever system, because you will not want to be in here breathing all the dust and chips that comes off the machine. With the Shapeoko, I use the Pro dust boot, which allows me to set the dust boot part to the surface of the material, and it doesn't move when the spindle goes up and down. I really like that setup better. So whatever machine you have, if you can have it to where the boot stays, you know, an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch above the surface of the material, and the spindle can move down freely without moving that, it's going to work a lot better. It's going to have a lot better results as far as getting the dust and pulling it in and disposing of it. So those are some of the things that I wanted to point out to you guys about getting into it and what you need to be looking at as far as getting started. So now, if you're interested in my thoughts about the Shapeoko, let's talk about that before we wrap it up. All right, guys, so a year in, and a lot of guys are always asking me, hey, Clack, are you still happy with the Shapeoko? And the answer is yes, absolutely. The only thing, and Carbide, if you're watching this, sorry. All right, guys, so I almost forgot one more complaint that I do have. And I've expressed this with Carbide, so it's not a surprise. The bit setter that they sell with the machine is made to mount over here in this corner, and it works great as long as you're not using the Pro version of the dust collection. Because what happens is that version of the dust collection does not go up and down with the spindle, and so what ends up happening is when you change bits, it goes over there and it slams it into the bit setter because it's too high and it hits the bottom of the dust shoe. This could have easily been resolved by shortening the height of that thing or recessing it into the machine, which I may end up doing myself. I've got a plan. We'll see if it works. But that's the only other complaint I have other than that whole rotary thing. The only thing that really gripes my rear end about them at the moment is I want to add a 4th axis, a rotary, to my machine, to my setup, to my configuration, because I've got some ideas for projects, but it's going to require me to do a 4th axis. I have a small 4th axis that works with my Genmitsu. It's right here. I can use this with any of the Genmitsus. I have this, and I'm going to be able to do some of the smaller projects with this guy, but for the bigger projects, I need to be able to take advantage of this 4-foot work area, and I don't have a 4th axis for the Shipoko. So I reached out to Carbide and I'm like, hey, any chance, when's it going to be here? Is it coming? When are we going to have the 4th axis for the Shipoko 5? And I was told it's not coming. That was a big Debbie Downer for me, because here I am with this 4 foot by 4 foot machine. That is the only thing that it doesn't provide to me currently that I want, and I have no hopes of getting it from Carbide 3D. So I'm going to be going to one of the 2 competitors that offer it, either Onefinity or CNC Labs. I hope to acquire myself a machine for that purpose. Now, I don't need another 4 foot by 4 foot machine, so hopefully I can get by with maybe like a 4 foot by 2 foot with the rotary, because I really don't care if it's not but a 1 foot by 4 foot, as long as it has the rotary to where I can do the longer items. So, but for now, I don't have the room. That's something we'll have to look at once I get into my new shop, hopefully, maybe 2026, spring of 2026, about a year from now. Hopefully I'll be in my new shop and I can look at adding that. But other than that, I love the machine. I think it's awesome. They do provide their software also. So if you're new getting into it and you don't want to learn Vectric right away, Carbide does provide the Carbide Create as well as Carbide Motion. I use Motion to run the machine. I don't use Carbide Create, but the reason that I don't, rewinding back, is because I learned how to run design files using the Genmitsu. And I started out using Easel, and then I went over to Vectric. Well, by the time I got the Shipoko, I had already gotten pretty well versed with VCarve from Vectric, and so I didn't want to use Carbide Create, and so I just stuck with Vectric, and that's what I've been using. It's really easy to export the files from Vectric, drop them over into Carbide Motion, and run the machine. It's completely compatible. You don't lose any functionality at all. I mean, everything that the machine offers, you can take advantage of using the post-processors in Vectric. So, all in all, I'm very happy with the machine, other than that 4th axis. So, Carbide, please. They said there wasn't enough demand for the 4th axis. So if you're one of those guys that has a Shipoko 5 Pro and you want the 4th axis, feel free to send them an email. Maybe that'll let them change their mind. I understand that they don't want to have to change their software and have to change the hardware, because with their machine having both software and hardware, as opposed to some of the others who only have hardware and use open source software, I get that it's going to be a little bit more of a headache, but man, that's something that I really, really, really was looking forward to getting. So, but altogether, guys, like I said, I paid $4,500 for this thing when I bought it. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I have had 0 problems with the machine. It's still running as good as it did the first day I got it, and it's still making me plenty of money, even though I have made enough with it to pay for itself. So, there you go. All right, guys, so the moral of the story is, regardless of whether you're going with the smaller machine or the bigger machine, a lot of the tools, a lot of the techniques, the strategies are all the same. So you can learn on the smaller machine just as well as you can on the bigger machine. So budget does matter for most of us, and I get that. So if you're getting into it with a $1,000 machine, the one thing I will tell you is, remember, with the Genmitsu and some of the other machines, the design software is going to be something that you're going to have to bring your own regardless. With the Shipoko, you can use Carbide Create and do the jobs. I mean, they have files out there that you can download. They have the library. They have classes and stuff that they do online through their portal. It's pretty helpful. But either way, you're going to have a design software. So you can use Carbide Create, or you can use whatever you choose with the Genmitsus. But I think it's a good starter machine for people. I hear people a lot of times bad-mouthing on the smaller machines. I don't have a problem with them, as long as you understand that work area, that's as big as your project's going to be. Also, this machine is not going to finish those projects as fast as this machine. Now, it's decently competitive with the Pro Max over here. It's not terrible, but it's still not as fast as the Shipoko when it comes to doing those jobs. All right, guys, so we're going to wrap it up on that. The moral of the story is there's a machine out there for everybody. There are budget machines out there, and there are some mega expensive machines out there. You just need to understand what machine is it going to take to accomplish the goal that you have, whether it be a small business, hobby, just something to do, fun things to have in your shop, or are you actually trying to make a business and get excessive amounts of throughput through the machine? And those are things you need to consider. The smaller machines are capable of making most of the same projects as long as the work area is sufficient, but you're going to take a lot longer to do so. That's the big ticket, is the smaller machines, less powerful, less rigid. You're going to have to go slower, but you can do a lot of the same things. So don't let people discourage you and make you think that you've got to have the $6, $7, $8, $10,000, $20,000 machine. Depending on your expectations, you don't necessarily have to. Like I said, I started out with a 4040, and as my desire to do more faster, went up, I upgraded the machine. And, I'm thankful for the way that I did go about it, because I learned early on what I liked about a machine, how to operate it, and I got all of my major goof ups. I got them done on the smaller machine before I got into the bigger one. Not that I still don't make mistakes, but you learn a lot from the little machines. So that's my take on it, guys. Like I said, there's a lot of guys out there know a lot more than I do about these machines, and that's just my experience from my perspective to you guys. So whether you want to look at the Genmitsu 4040 Pro Max, or if you're interested in Shipoko, I will be dropping, as always, links down below in the description. If this video was helpful to you, feel free to use those links when you go out to get that stuff, and let them know that the Shack kind of helped you make an informed decision about your purchase. But just do your research, look around, see what's out there, guys, and make the decision based on what you feel like is best for you, and have fun with it. So until next time, be safe and have a good day.